Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everyone that's joining us for this evening. We expect to have a very good show about a topic that I think has not been discussed enough around the city, the state, region, whatever. And we have two exciting guests with us this evening. But before we get started, I have to have the behind the scenes guy that is in front of the scenes guy, Mr. Tyrone Jackson. How you doing, Mr. Jackson?
I am doing well. I am doing well. Thank you very much, Dr. Kane. And I've been talking with these ladies behind the scene, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun this evening. I hate to say that with the content of the subject that we're going to talk about, but knowledge is always powerful and is always fun.
Exactly. And on this show, as everyone knows, but those that might be the first time here, on this show, we try to enlighten people as to the subject matter, but we keep it as lightheartedly as we can. Obviously, this is a subject matter that, and I mentioned to our guest this evening, I can always attest to that struck me close, that struck home with me so many years ago. Not to mention with there have been some patients of mine that have also been down this road of suicide, and that I wished I could have done something about. And then there's some that I actually did do something about. So I see now we have Miss Turner has joined us, the more articulate and the better looking of the of the two hosts has joined us. Miss Turner, how you doing?
Oh, just peachy, although it's rainy here in Northeast Florida. I felt like I was slipping and sliding into the house to get on the podcast. So it's good to be with everyone this evening and hope you all are doing well. Looking forward to tonight's discussion.
We getting echo from somebody. Is that you, Miss Turner? Okay, I muted mine. It's not me. Miss Turner, mute yours. It is you. we get a little echo on you, Miss Turner.
Let me make a couple of adjustments, but go ahead, Ms. Jocelyn, and get these lovely ladies introduced.
Yes. I think she'll do a much better job than I can.
So this evening, a serious topic actually. It's one that we don't always like to talk about, but it's definitely one that's important for us to talk about. This month is, I believe, Suicide Prevention or Suicide Awareness Month. I don't know, Ms. Skinner or Ms. Cranford, is it a suicide prevention or suicide awareness, or is it awareness and prevention? Because I think it should really be a little bit of both.
It's both.
And also we talk about National Depression Screening Day, because that's another one that people don't want to always admit that they are dealing with depression, and for whatever reasons, various reasons, sometimes it's shame, and then it's a stigma associated in many communities about seeking help. But I hope from tonight's discussion that folks will realize that it is very important that we have a conversation about when it's necessary, when it's time to seek help, and even more importantly, how to recognize it in others. We witness tragedy after tragedy of individuals, unfortunately, who may have had some underlying mental health conditions and unfortunately cause harm not only to themselves, but also cause harm to others. So tonight we have joining with us Genesis Cranford and Stephanie Skinner. They're both licensed mental health counselors with the Child Guidance Center here in Northeast Florida. I learned about them recently. I can't remember which one I started communicating with first. I think it was Stephanie. Hopefully I can call you Stephanie. I'm Jocelyn, by the way. And because you all have a very interesting unit called the Rapid Response. What's the T stand for? Help me out. I see you shaking your head. Is it therapy, treatment? Which is it, Stephanie? I saw you shaking your head.
It's a rapid response team.
Team, that's what it is. I knew it was something, but and when you think of that, you're like, oh my goodness. When you think about someone who's about to cause harm to themselves or others, a rapid response is very important. So welcome, ladies. How are you both doing? I'll start with you, Stephanie, since you're unmuted. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, and thank you so much for having us. So, again, my name is Stephanie Skinner. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I've been working in the field for 11 years now. I have enjoyed my time providing therapy services to children and family within our area because I recognize the importance of mental health and maintaining good, strong mental health within individuals and families and how that has an impact on society in general. So it's work that I'm very passionate about. And then with the team that I'm working with currently, it's really important work that we're providing because we assist people in moments of dire need, you know, when they're in crisis and they feel like they're at the end of their ropes and potentially may do something harmful to themselves or others. They have our hotline, you know, they can reach out 24/7 and get some support with those issues and concerns.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. And we'll learn more about the work that you're doing. Genesis, how are you doing this evening? Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for having us. So my name is Genesis. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I've been in the field since 2017. I originally started off as a school therapist, so I've seen a very diverse set of clients. And now I'm the supervisor for the mobile response team for Duval County. I love child guidance. I love my job. I love what I do. And I feel that our job is very, very important in the mental health field, and prevention is extremely important in spreading awareness as well. Because not a lot of people are comfortable asking those questions, but that is our role and that is what we do.
Wonderful. Thank you. So now let's just delve into it and say, you know, can you share, I won't say a personal, how about a professional experience that highlights the need for a rapid response in crisis situations?
So anytime that somebody is feeling suicidal, has suicidal thoughts, anytime somebody's feeling homicidal or has homicidal thoughts, anytime somebody is truly in a mental health crisis, as in they're unable to de-escalate themselves, that would be a good time to call us. Or you have a child or a family member who's unable to truly de-escalate themselves and they need a little more support. So we link them to services. We de-escalate, we safety plan, and we make sure that they have the support system that they need as far as getting into treatment, having consistent treatment. And, you know, we have a whole team. We have responders, we have case managers, we have peer specialists, and then, of course, us as leadership.
Jennifer, I heard you say
Genesis.
It's okay. It happens all the time.
Genesis, I heard you say anytime you recognize, and that's been part of the biggest problem that we've experienced as providers. I'm just a little background. I am a family practice physician, been in the Jacksonville North Side for umpteen years, but I also have worked over at the Mayport Naval Station and NAS Naval Station. So I have run into several suicidal situations in which I needed some help quick, fast, and in a hurry. And a lot of times didn't know who to go to. How do we begin to recognize? I mean, I know what I can say in terms of being a physician, but how do the lay people, how do they begin to recognize those signs of suicidal intent?
You know, saying things like, I don't want to be here anymore. Saying things like, there's no point in going on. There's no point in living. Isolating themselves, giving away things that they no longer, that are important to them, but they don't want. Saying things like, there's no point or there's no reason to keep going. Making a lot of gestures as in like self-harm and things like that, or even just saying, I want to die, I don't want to be here anymore. A lot of like the big red flags are the isolation, the depressive symptoms, the feeling worthless, feeling hopeless, like there's no really motivation to continue going on. And then especially if they don't have a reason to live for, or if you just keep seeing them declining and declining with their depressive symptoms, those are big red flags too. Stephanie, what else do you think?
Yes, those are definitely some important warning signs to look out for. I would also give another example. If you have someone who loses interest in things that they previously enjoyed doing, that's another indicator where they're no longer enjoying activities, they're no longer taking care of or putting any effort into things like their physical appearance, for example. Their energy levels might be super low. And if that's not typical, you definitely want to notice or pay closer attention to that. They might be sleeping excessively, not wanting to get out of bed. Again, personal hygiene may suffer as a result of that low energy level and just not having the motivation to get up and do the things that they typically were able to do, and any kind of disruptions in their daily activities, not being able to go to work, missing days from work, missing days from school, not talking to or connecting with friends, family members. Those things are important signs to pay attention to.
Is it usually related to a situation that has happened, maybe a divorce with the family, or the loss of a grandparent in terms of with children, or is it not always associated with a loss, if you will, versus maybe everyday circumstances like bullying or, boyfriend breakup or something like that?
I don't think there's like one determining factor for any sort of symptoms like that. Depression is genetic, so it does run in families. And that's an important factor for people to understand too, so they can better understand themselves and their family members. But typically, suicide thoughts and ideations hits everybody in every socioeconomic status and every race, religion, anything. It's not like there's not a determining factor of, is this person going to have suicidal ideation or not? There are cultures or different types of people who are more prone to it. But like I said, there's not one determining factor that would indicate that.
Now, when you say it hits everybody, did you mean hit every type of situation or type of ethnic groups and blah, 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 blah,
Yes.
Not every individual, right?
Yes, exactly.
I just don't want people to misunderstand.
Yes.
So I don't recall me doing but I didn't want to wait on my time to find out that if it was everybody. So, okay.
Yeah. And it's very prevalent in men as well, and men are less likely to seek help, and so that's always a big concern as well, especially adult men. They're less likely to seek help,
And
so
we're
that's
more
something to consider as well.
And we're considered more successful at doing it, right? Because when we make up our mind, we make up our mind.
Yes.
So do you find that there's a particular age, Stephanie, where it starts to show in, let's just say, young people? Like, is it, teen ages or younger? At what point should parents start paying more attention versus, a toddler, or elementary age children, but it may start to surface, if you will, in middle school or high school?
I mean, honestly, I would say at any age, you want to pay attention to it and take those types of statements seriously. We unfortunately have had clients as young as 5 and 6 years old who express these types of thoughts and feelings. So it definitely needs to be taken into account. Where is that coming from? We need to consider what's going on in their lives. Like, what have they been exposed to? What's contributing to them making those types of statements, especially at such a young age. And, it really just varies in rates across all ages. And like Genesis mentioned earlier, it touches every level of people. It doesn't matter the age, race, socioeconomic status, culturally, everyone is touched by it in some way. So, yeah, sadly, there is no age restriction on when someone could potentially start to experience suicidal thoughts.
What are the analytics in terms of the role that social media has played with aging and suicide and so on and so on? I mean, because these days, social media is a monster in a whole lot of aspects. So can you give us a little background on that and what we should be looking at, thinking about what our parents may want to do, our parents may want to do as it relates to those ages who are out there on the social media, maybe even prevent them from getting out there on the social media. But
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific statistics, but I can definitely say that with the growth of social media over the years, it has definitely had an impact on the overall mental health of not just youth, but even adults. And one of the issues and concerns that we often will find is that, number one, with bullying, for example, there was a time where bullying was just isolated to the school environment. And then when kids would go home and be with their families or whomever else or their loved ones, they got a bit of a break from it. But now, when they're on social media, unfortunately, it just continues and they don't have any way to really escape from that type of torment that they're getting from their peers. And it really does weigh on them and it can cause them to experience these types of thoughts. And then also things like, I'm sure you're all aware that people tend to post a very curated best version of themselves online. So sadly, a lot of people don't recognize that that's not reality. And they think that these people are living such amazing lives and they have all of these awesome things going on. And they might experience some jealousy or envy, or, they don't feel as happy with their own lives or their own situation or their physical appearance and all of those different factors because they're comparing themselves with unrealistic images that they're seeing online or images that honestly aren't even real at all. We have AI nowadays, so that's a factor where people are seeing images that are photoshopped or computer generated and they're thinking that this is something they want to aspire to or live up to, but it's not even real. It's not even a real person.
Wow, that's something. And I know when I was at the health department, by the way, my background is I'm a health educator. We always encouraged to limiting screen time, and not just online, but also television as well, and getting youth or young people engaged in other things. So what are some tools or strategies you recommend for de-escalating a crisis? Because oftentimes if a loved one is seemingly in crisis or out of control, if you will, people tend to call the sheriff's department in order to help bring some calmness in those individuals. What do you all suggest that people do when faced with a situation that is seemingly out of control, where someone is threatening to harm themselves or others?
Connection is everything. If you cannot connect with that person, it is extremely difficult to de-escalate them. As a person who is close to them, as a family member who might be close to them, it might be difficult for you to connect with them. And that's why it's so important to bring in third parties when you are in those situations. But just being very strength-based, focusing on what they do well, focusing on what they're good at, focusing on what they like to try to kind of distract them from the crisis at hand, and trying to relate to them on that level. If you have your child who's really escalated, hey, I know you like to watch Winnie the Pooh. Why don't we watch an episode of Winnie the Pooh, and maybe that'll calm you down, and then we can talk about this afterwards. A lot of times when people are escalated, especially children, people really try to teach them or lecture them or kind of make them understand what they're doing wrong, but that's not helpful, because when you're escalated, you're triggered, you're not thinking, that front part of your brain is just shut off, so there is no logic, there is no reasoning, but that connection can really help bring them back down.
That's so true. That's so true. People tend to want to lecture. And I can see that how that wouldn't work. Go ahead, Dr. Kane.
I was going to say, as a clinician, that as I got older, my population got older, so I don't see as much pediatrics, but I do see adults, and I see geriatricians like me, geriatrics like yourself, like myself. A lot of situations what I'm seeing these days is a lot of caregiving because of the baby boomers are getting much older. You have a lot of individuals around the house whom are taking care of their parents, and sometimes that get to be pretty overwhelming. And we're not even talking about the affected, the dementia affected individual, but we're talking about in this particular question, talking about the caregiver, that they can get overwhelmed with the needs of their parents and the unusual behavior of their parents, the parents that behavior that they did not grow up with. Are you guys seeing much of that? And as a clinician, how should I start handling those situations? The caregiver may not be my patient, but I may recognize the stress being provided that my patient is putting on the caregiver. And then that's when you start listening to the caregiver and seeing, you're looking at them, you're trying to recognize what's going on with that individual. So even though they may not be patients, any advice you guys can give clinicians like myself as to what to look for in those individuals, because it's a growing population, as you know, because of parents, Alzheimer's and dementia is a much growing population of individuals. Can you tell me what it is that I should be looking for and how I should handle it if I do recognize it in a non-patient?
Yeah, if it's a non-patient, for example, like you said, the caregiver of an ailing or elderly parent, I would definitely provide them some support, speak with them about who's in their support system. So as a caregiver, their primary role and their primary concern often is just making sure that that relative is okay and all of their needs are met. But often they end up neglecting their own needs and self-care and that type of stuff because they're so focused on caring for their loved one. So encouraging them to engage in some self-care, seeking out some help and support for themselves, whether it's signing up for therapy, joining a support group, anything that might be beneficial to them, so that way they don't feel so alone in that process. Encourage them to call a hotline like 988, for example. That's not solely for people who are experiencing suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideation. If they just need someone to talk to or vent, that's a good option. So just providing them with resources could be helpful because that is a difficult transition. And we do sometimes see and work with elderly individuals who are struggling with their mental health due to the fact that they're at a phase in life where they've lost some of their independence. They're not able to do some of the things that they were able to do on their own anymore. They have lost a lot of people that they're close to. So a lot of their friends, significant others, family members have passed away. So they're struggling with grief and loss. So that in itself will sometimes cause them to have their own thoughts of suicide or just, feeling as though they no longer want to be here because things are just too difficult.
Sometimes after dealing with patients, real quick, Mr. Turner, sometimes after dealing with the patient that, that might have dementia, the next thing I do is I turn to the caregiver and go, well, how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Just to ask the question I'm fishing to try to see what they can provide me in terms of their wellness, their well-being, because I recognize that without them, if they're gone, this parent or the person that they're taking care of is going to wind up somewhere that's not maybe very conducive to their well-being. And but anyway, yeah.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Genesis Crampert and Stephanie Skinner, licensed mental health counselors with the Child Guidance Center. They are part of the Rapid Response Team. And if you wonder what a rapid response team is, I'd actually like to give them a chance to talk about what does a typical day look like for you all when it comes to rapidly responding to people who are in crisis.
A typical day for a responder is different than a typical day for us. A typical day for a responder, I was a responder before I became supervisor, is you're on call, you have your shift. At any moment during your shift, you're ready for that call. You get a call, you go out, especially if it's a school, you go out right away. We're required to be there within 60 minutes. So anywhere in Jacksonville, we will get there within 60 minutes. We arrive to the crisis call. Typically, when we go to crisis calls, everyone is escalated. The school staff, the parent, the client, everybody involved is typically escalated. So we'll go out, we'll talk with whoever called us, kind of get the background of what's going on. We'll talk with the client in private. We'll de-escalate. We'll safety plan, however long that takes. We ensure that somebody else is aware of the safety plan to make sure that they have that support system that they need. And then we link them to services. So if they don't already have counseling services, we will link them to services and we'll do what it takes to get them into those services. Oftentimes, especially on our overnight shifts, we will get calls from police officers who are wanting to get a second opinion on a situation. Maybe they have a child who they feel doesn't need to be Baker Acted, but they just want them to have those resources or a safety plan. So we'll go out and assist with that. Our adult calls are a little different. We go out on adult calls as well, but sometimes they don't want us to go to the home. So we do a lot of over the phone de-escalation, safety planning, and also linking to services.
Explain Baker Act to those people that may not know. I'm just thought I'd throw that out there.
So a Baker Act is an involuntary hospitalization. So it's when you meet criteria for the Baker Act statute. And it's, it's not something that we like to do. The whole purpose of our team is to prevent the Baker Acts, and we do a really good job of it. But occasionally you have that person who really, really, really needs to be in the safety of a facility where somebody can be watching them and monitoring them 24/7. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's necessary for some of our clients. They can also go voluntarily if we don't feel like they meet criteria. They can take themselves and be admitted voluntarily if they just feel like, you know what, I may not meet criteria, but I still want to go. But yeah, that's essentially Baker Act. Like, they have a plan, they have means, and they have the intent.
Wow, that's first of all, by the way, when you mention adults, I didn't know Child Guidance Center also responds to those adults who are in crisis as well. And when you say adults, you don't necessarily mean just up to 18 years of age. You mean even beyond that?
Yes, entire Duval County, we will help whoever is in need. There's no age limit for us. There's no age minimum. There's no age maximum. We help all walks of life.
Wow. Well, we're going to give you a break now in our Pause for the Truth. Don't go anywhere. But each week we feature a history maker. And at this time, you all can take a drink of water or whatever, but don't go anywhere. We're going to have a moment for our history maker. Take it away, Tyrone.
Welcome to Pause for the Truth History Maker Minute, September 10th, 2024. Are you worried about the rising rates of teen suicide in Black and minority youth? What happens when that youth is stolen? We are losing our children. Suicide, once unthinkable, is now a chilling reality. The numbers are stark. Over the last 25 years, suicide rates among Black youth have skyrocketed. This is a crisis. Our children's lives depend on it. Why? Why are so many young Black and brown kids choosing to end their own lives? Racial discrimination. They see it, they feel it, the constant sting of prejudice, the weight of low expectations. Seeking help is seen as weakness. Financial instability breeds despair. And then there's social media, a breeding ground for insecurity. Behind every struggle, there's a pioneer, a trailblazer. Enter Dr. Michael A. Lindsay, a noted scholar in child and adolescent mental health. His research focuses on the mental health needs of vulnerable youth. He has conducted key research on Black teenage suicide in the United States. And then there is Dr. Alfie M. Breland Noble, a pioneering psychologist and founder of the ACOMA Project. Her work focuses on culturally relevant interventions to support mental health. Building bridges of hope, support, and intervention. We cannot afford to be silent. Our children need our help now. Community support is critical. Churches, community centers, and after-school programs can provide safe spaces for young people to connect and share their struggles. Access to culturally competent mental health care is essential. Educational programs can help destigmatize mental health issues. We need policy changes to address systemic issues like poverty and discrimination. For support in Jacksonville, NAMI Jacksonville offers free support groups. United Way 211 connects you to local resources. Here Tomorrow offers support groups for mental health and suicide survivors. Florida Mobile Response Teams provide 24/7 crisis intervention. Text START to 741-741. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available at 988. We can no longer afford to sit on the sideline. It's time we all got involved.
Wow. Thank you, Tyrone. He does such a great job with pulling together some information. One thing we haven't talked about that I just have to mention, and I know we're probably all sick of saying it, but I think it was such a pivotal time in our lives that did you all see an increase in crisis situations after or during COVID-19, the pandemic?
Definitely.
In any particular population?
I mean, I feel like it was across the board as well. One of the issues that we noticed quite a bit with the pandemic and schools having to shut down, unfortunately, a lot of kids that we have in our community are struggling with poverty, and they are not in very healthy situations within their home environment. So school often was their only escape from some of those really negative and traumatizing situations. And then once schools closed, they were sort of just stuck in those very unhealthy situations all day, every day, with no types of healthy outlets available to them. So of course, they experienced more distressing symptoms during that time. And then parents and caregivers, they also were struggling with now having to adjust to their kids being at home and maybe them not being able to work if that were furloughed or laid off, then financial implications that go along with that. And of course, the healthcare crisis that we were dealing with, people just being sick and dying, and that's traumatic. And all of those different factors kind of came into play. The inability to really connect with others the way that we need to, as humans, we tend to need to be connected with others and have people who we can talk to or be around and kind of have like people to console us or support us if we're struggling. But when we weren't able to really interact with each other or get out or do some of the things that may have been ways to help us cope, all of that was taken away. So that definitely, I think, caused a huge increase in mental health struggles for children as well as adults.
Providers, you think about people who were, just overwhelmed with things, providers, and how do you all train your first responders to handle high stakes mental health crisis?
We always advocate for self-care. For example, in our team meetings, we're always asking them, what are you doing for health self-care? What are you planning on doing for self-care? It sounds cliche in the mental health field, self-care, but it's so important. A lot of times you experience burnout. I remember during COVID seeing clients virtually, like your eyes hurt, your brain hurts. You're trying to engage with clients virtually, and it's not the same as in person when you can really truly interact with them. So it does become very draining. And so just making sure that you're resting, making sure that you're hydrating, eating well, going for walks, things like that are so important when you're dealing in crisis situations. And then always ensuring too that they understand that we are the calm when we get to a crisis situation. We have to remain as calm as possible. Even, I mentioned earlier that in a crisis situation, everybody's in a crisis, right? But when we get there, we cannot allow ourselves to be in a crisis. We have to be very, very calm. And that takes a lot of practice. And we hire people who are good at that and are able to do that and are able to be well trained in that. And I think we do a pretty good job overall. And if they do have a situation where they feel that they're very escalated, they call us and we walk them through it and we help them. And, I've had my fair share of calling, crying, and I'm freaking out and I'm upset. And they do that with us too. And that's what we're here for. We're here to support each other.
So how do people find out? How do they access your services?
They call our hotline.
And that is?
904-982-4911. It's 24/7, holidays, weekends, nights, doesn't matter. Somebody's always working. Somebody will always answer the phone. We're always on call. So yes.
One more time. What's that number?
904-982-4911.
So we have a question. In the school setting, children need someone with a spirit of trust, compassion, patience, and a spirit of likability in order to really help these children. It can't just be someone with a degree. Would you say that you talked about your responders and the fact that you do have colleagues who are kind and caring folks? And so would you say that you find that the people who are providing the services and support to your families, obviously you're not going to rag any of your colleagues right now, but you're finding that you do have a pretty good team that's helping the clients that you all are serving?
Yes. And sometimes in the school settings, the kids don't want to talk to the teachers. They don't want to talk to the school counselors. They don't want to talk to the administrators, the principals, the school staff. And so just having somebody different come in and speak with them, somebody who doesn't know them on that level and can just kind of relate and connect with them, sets a whole different stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I work, my during the day job, I work at the Partnership for Child Health, and one of the projects that we're working on it's called RECAST. It is a SAMHSA grant, Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, a federal grant, where we are, and RECAST is building resilience in communities experiencing stress and trauma, or after stress and trauma. And the thing that we've done is through our partner, Hope and Healing Jacksonville and Voices Institute and some of our other folks, they've been doing some training on trauma. And oftentimes people don't recognize that the situations that they've experienced, those adverse childhood experiences, the things that have happened throughout their lives are indeed traumatic. And so now that we've been offering them training, they were like, wait a minute, that's me, that's my life, right? And they've just been doing life because it was a way of life for them. And I think that, I always tell people, when my father got a terminal illness diagnosis, that's when I sought therapy, because that was traumatic to me. That was the best thing that could have happened to me, because I was able to go in and talk to someone. I knew Dr. Kane. Dr. Kane was my physician at the time. And he was like, and he was my dad's physician. He was like, oh, you could have come and talked. No, I needed to talk to somebody who didn't know me, and nothing against Dr. Kane, great primary care physician, but I talked to a licensed mental health counselor who really got me through that dark time of of dealing with that in anticipation of the inevitable of having a terminal illness. So I really, like to encourage people to do that. And so there are a lot of great organizations out there working together. I know you all are going to have an event coming up soon. That's how I met. I came into contact with you all recently, that you are encouraging providers to come to. Can either of you speak to what that event is about?
Let me just say this real quick. Dr. Kane also encouraged her to go seek someone else other than me. But go ahead.
But yeah, the event, it's our first suicide prevention symposium, and it's being held at the Aloft at Tapestry Park over in the Deerwood area. It will be on September 20th, starts at 9 a.m. We do ask everyone to get there around 8:30ish to check in and get settled. But we have Kevin Briggs is our guest speaker. He is a suicide awareness advocate. One of the things that he's mostly known for is his work with law enforcement, and particularly doing work with their crisis unit, and also being like a hostage negotiator. And he has experience talking with individuals and helping de-escalate them when they have attempted to commit suicide by jumping off of the Golden Gate Bridge, because that's one of the areas that's very commonly utilized for that reason. So they kind of created like a task force where law enforcement and first responders were able to be a bit more involved and push prevention and awareness about that issue in their area. So great speaker. We're looking forward to having him talk. Myself and Genesis will also be doing a presentation talking about assessing and addressing suicidality with clients. The symposium is geared towards mental health professionals, not necessarily the lay person, but maybe at some point we'll do one for lay people. And aside from our training, we'll also have a panel discussion with several of our community partners, from JSO, Mental Health Resource Center, 988, Duval County Public Schools. So there's a lot of individuals who are very, very invested in suicide prevention and awareness and mental health services, who you can get some really good information from that day. So we definitely encourage you to sign up. I can send the flyer so that way you guys will have a way to disperse it to your audience if there's anyone who's interested in signing up for the event. But definitely one that we're excited about, and hopefully it'll be an annual thing that we can do each year.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. And I do have the flyer already, so I'll make sure I share it with Tyrone so that he can upload it on our site. So what are some of the biggest challenges in providing timely intervention to someone in crisis? I know this is not easy work.
And JT, I just want to make sure, one thing I want to ask. That 988 number, I want to make sure clinicians understand, is not just for the patients to call or the individuals to call. It's also for clinicians, right?
Anyone can call 988.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. Go ahead, JT.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The question that you asked, can you repeat it?
And I was asking, what are some of the biggest challenges in providing timely intervention to someone in crisis?
I mean, one challenge, it's kind of something we don't have much control over, is trying to get there as quickly as possible. We do a really great job at it because per our, contract and our managing entity, we're supposed to be there within 60 minutes of the crisis call. So our arrival time kind of hovers between 20-25 minutes or so, sometimes 30 minutes, just depending on where they're located in Duval, because it's a very large county. But our staff,
largest in the nation, in the land, in the nation rather, yes.
we're a large county, and our staff are, just mental health professionals, and we drive our own vehicles whenever responding to crisis calls. So it's not like we have sirens or anything where we can avoid traffic jams,
And
or
that's a good
there's an
point.
accident or something on the road. So
Yeah.
we explain that, though, to callers if there's a situation where they need more of an immediate response. If someone is in imminent danger and they could potentially be seriously hurt or injured within a very quick time frame, then we'll loop in our partners at 911 and have law enforcement involvement so they can get there quickly, because they can respond much faster when it comes to the actual travel time to get there.
Only thing about it, that to me is when the situations really escalate, when people see law enforcement, if they arrive before you all do, because that brings in a whole different element to the situation. I understand that when you have to do what you have to do, particularly if there are weapons, for example, involved, or
Right.
harm to other people. How can the stigma surrounding mental health and crisis situations be reduced to encourage more people to seek help, and hopefully not get to that point where it's a heightened situation?
Mhm. I think doing things like what we're doing now, having podcasts where this information is readily available, more information that's spread about mental health awareness, I think the better. So that way people don't feel like it's such a taboo topic and something that seems uncommon, because it's actually more common than a lot of people realize. And they don't have to feel as though they're alone or like they're the only one who is experiencing these types of feelings or thoughts. Oftentimes, once people realize, like, oh, someone else out there feels the same way I do, that helps them let their guard down a little bit, and it helps with that stigma and just recognizing that it's not a weakness to ask for help. I think shifting the language and helping people recognize it actually takes quite a bit of strength to speak up and say that you need some support, or this is something that you're not able to manage on your own. So just, I think talking about it and being comfortable having these conversations can help with decreasing that stigma.
And also, post when you talked about that post crisis, when those individuals, if they happen to be Baker acted, or if people find out that they've gone for mental health, like I'm very vocal about having gone to see a therapist during the time of my father's situation, but a lot of people are not as vocal in talking about it as I am. So how can communities improve their support for individuals post crisis? And I'm not just picking on you, Stephanie, also you, Genesis. Either of you can answer.
I think just ensuring that they have a support system, and if it is, when you ask about how the community can assist them, being available, their support system, as in their family, their friends, their church groups, whatever groups they belong to, being available to them and not judging them. Having a judgment-free zone, as in, you can come and talk to me about your mental health, and I'm not going to judge you, or I'm not gonna say things like, oh, that's crazy, or like, I can't believe you feel that way, or why are you depressed, things are so great, or look outside, you have a great life. Just understanding that it's not something that people can truly control. It is something that really just kind of grasps you and brings you down with it. And it takes so much to overcome that. And when I have clients and I explain depression and suicidal ideation to them, I explain it as in, I don't want you to feel like you have this situation, or you have this symptom, or you have these feelings. I want you to think of it as you're battling it, and you can't win a battle by yourself. You can't win a war by yourself. You have to have a whole army with you, a whole team of people. And so being able to acknowledge who is on your team, who is battling that war with you.
As a clinician, I've had situations where I recognize that patient was suicidal. And it's prior to 988, but I'm sure I've run into it again. The individual displayed signs of suicidal intentions, and I had one guy one time. He had he spoke to harming his family or whomever, and he had a shotgun in the trunk, and he readily had told me about it. You know, my difficulty was trying to keep him there at the same time. I'm trying to get some help on the line, the phone line, and so if I call 988 as a clinician, and I give them a potential situation where there is arms or anything along that line, weapons involved. Do they then, because trying to make two phone calls, 911 and 988, may be a little bit difficult. And if I make them aware of the situation, do they then they call the law enforcement to kind of help me get this situation resolved? Or just
Yeah.
trying to show what clinicians trying to show the dilemmas that clinicians may face it.
Yeah, typically if 988 can't de-escalate or they feel like it's out of their scope, they'll transfer to us a lot of times. And if it's something that's emergent, like they have a weapon in their lap, like they're going to do something, they will transfer it to 911 and they will give all the information to 911. So that is something that they do. They transfer it to either the local mobile response team of whichever county that person is located in, or they will call the local law enforcement.
Any advice to clinicians as how do we at least occupy the thoughts of that individual to help arise?
Repeat your question for me. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Any advice to the clinician as to how we keep that person, the individual, preoccupied until we get help?
Distract them. Distract them. Don't, I would say don't mention hospitalization. Don't mention Baker Act. Don't mention you need help. Mention, I'm here to support you. I'm here for you. Stay with me. Let's talk about things. That's what 988 does. Actually, they, when they're transferring them to us, they will just kind of talk to them about, what's your day look like? Trying to ground them. What do you see right now? What's going on in your surroundings? What did you have for dinner? Have you eaten yet today? Things like that to kind of just distract them from the situation at hand. But making sure, like, if you're going to go make a phone call, making sure that somebody else is staying with that person and able to distract them. Because if you're making a phone call, that person is probably panicking and that person is probably kind of like either feeling like, okay, I'm not important to this person because they're making a phone call, or they're calling somebody on me and I'm going to get in trouble, or I'm going to be put in a situation I don't want to be in. So just ensuring, if I have to make a phone call, I always tell the person, hey, I'm going to go talk to somebody real quick. This person is going to stay in here with you. Is that okay? So just announcing your movements and announcing your plans. That way you don't startle them or you don't trigger them.
Wow, that makes a whole lot of sense. How do you balance respecting a person's autonomy with the need for intervention when they are at risk of harming themselves or others?
If they're adults, we have to have their consent. We cannot assess adults without their express consent. And I know earlier you asked about barriers to intervention. That is one of our barriers to intervention. We have a lot of parents who have adult children who have sorts of, symptoms or mental illnesses, and then the person just refuses services. And in those situations, we'll often refer them to JSO because they have a little different criteria than we do as far as interventions go. But for us, we definitely, if they're an adult 18 or over, we need their express consent to talk to them, to go out to the home, to do any sort of intervention. For children, if they are under the age of 13, we also need express consent in order to talk to them. And that's just Florida statute. If they're 13 years or over, they're able to consent for themselves.
As young as 13, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
One quick question, and I'm done for probably this evening. The day of telemedicine, okay, sometimes you may pick up something over the phone as a clinician, pick up something over the phone, and it's like, whoa, I need to get them help ASAP.
Mm-hmm.
Any advice on how I keep them preoccupied on the phone while I'm trying to get, instead of trying to convince them to call 988 because they may hang up the phone and never call 988, particularly if I think it's truly life-threatening, at that moment in time. Any advice on how to handle it? I'm not a licensed mental health counselor, or maybe a jack of all trades and a master of none. But I still try to figure out, how do I handle a situation like that?
I think in that situation, especially if you're alone and if you don't have anybody else to help you with like distracting them or talking to them, or like for us, we have two phones, right? So we use one phone to call 911, the other phone to talk to the person at the same time. So if you don't have that situation, I would say saying something along the lines of, this is really tough, and I want to support you the best that I can. Is it okay if I call my friend for help right now? And 988 can be your friend, and you three-way and you call them while you're on the phone with them at the same time, and that's how you kind of connect the two. But just always framing it as in, I really want to support you, I really want to help you, but I need to ask somebody for help. Is that okay? But definitely, you don't want to hang up, and we don't do that either. We don't hang up with the person. If we have to transfer them to a responder, or if we have to transfer them to another county, we don't hang up. We ensure that we don't stay on the line with them.
In a textable situation with 988, I lied when I said that was the last question, but in a textable situation with 988, because I'm on the phone with this person, I know if I hang up, that's done, but I need to be able to contact somebody, and all I got is my only other phone I got is my cell phone.
The text crisis line is 741-741.
All right. Mm-hmm. Got that, Tyrone?
Stephanie, were you going to say something? I saw you on mute.
Yeah, I was just going to mention with what he was describing, I think it's important to be honest about your limitations as their provider, explaining to them what your role is and what's within your scope of practice, and when it's necessary for you to tag in one of your colleagues for some help. So just explaining to them, I can help you with the physical aspects of your treatment, but with the mental health aspects, I'm going to need to get one of my partners involved so that way they could assist you further. And also just reiterating and reminding people that our overall health is important to manage. I think we get so fixated on just physical health, but we've got to keep in mind that our minds and bodies are connected. So if you have things going on emotionally and mentally, it can have physical impacts, and vice versa. When people have physical and health and medical issues, it can cause emotional distress. So it's important to have that balance of where you're taking care of your mind and your body.
So now someone's at home as we wrap up the show. Someone's at home. What advice would you give to someone who may be supporting a loved one through a mental health crisis?
I would definitely say just be present. A lot of times we want to jump in and rescue, or we want to have answers, or we want to have a solution to the problem, or we just want to take away a person's pain because we don't like to see them suffering. It can make us feel a little uneasy or uncomfortable. But oftentimes just allowing them to have a human moment and appreciating the fact that they trusted you enough to share or disclose whatever it is that they're struggling with, that's huge. So just being present with them and letting them know, I'm here. If you need to vent, go ahead. I'm available to listen. We're going to work through this together. We're going to figure this out together. If it's something that's beyond what I can help you with, then I'm going to be here with you while we get some additional support, and letting the person know that you care and you want them to be here.
Being present, being available, and I say no judgment. Making sure you don't have any judgment when you're talking to them.
You know what? The two of you have been amazing tonight. And guess what? We're at the end of the show. You can now breathe, right? So thank you all so much. This has been very enlightening. Thank you for the work that you're doing. At the end of every episode, we like to give our guests an opportunity to share their final thoughts. So Genesis, I'll start with you since I started the podcast with Stephanie. I'll start with you and say, what are your final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience tonight?
I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited that you guys are doing this because every platform that we can talk about suicide prevention and awareness is so important because it really does help decrease the stigma. And decreasing the stigma will open so many doors for people to have those conversations and ask those questions. So thank you for the work that you do and spreading awareness.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that about stigma because so many people still think it's taboo to seek mental health counseling. So thank you. Thank you. I love that. I love that. Stephanie, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, along the same lines, it's just so important to have that open dialogue when it comes to discussing mental health. And again, I like to make that mind body connection and use that example of the same way that we can have cancer run in our family, diabetes run in our family, high blood pressure. You can have depression run in your family, and anxiety, and all of these other things that affect our mental health. So, the same way that we treat some of those illnesses, we also have to treat the mental health disorders that are present and help people to normalize it and feel a bit more comfortable getting the help and support that they need. Because we wouldn't expect someone with cancer to just figure that out themselves, right? So why is mental health any different?
Wow, that is so true, and it's not something that we think about, right? Because some people, it might be a revelation to them. They may not have known that depression runs in the family. So thank you for that, Dr. Kane. What are your final thoughts regarding tonight's show?
Well, quickly piggybacking one on what Stephanie mentioned, and that is, depression is genetic, and anxiety, depression, and other issues with mental health can be genetic and or epigenetic in terms of its origin. So we have to be very aware of those possibilities. The other thing is that I think as clinicians that we need to make sure that we try to intervene before it gets to that suicidal state. Start recognizing the depression that's taking place, the anxiety that patients may be experiencing, and not just try to throw a pill at them and think that that's the end all. Try to get them to financial to counseling, much like what you did with yourself, Miss Turner, that I also enthusiastically encourage, and that is go seek help with some others that who may not be able to provide that counseling that I'm not capable of doing as well as they are. Okay. Then the last thing would be there is no one size fit all with the suicidal situation. Examine it. Try to see where you best can handle the best way you can handle it. Try to intervene, like I said, before you. I'm gonna say pre-suicidal thoughts as much as you can. Try to get to that point so that you don't have to get to the suicidal thoughts. Okay, that's it for your truth.
Thank you both so much for, again, enlightening our audience. I think, again, this topic is always a difficult one. We've had others on in the past. It may not be the most glamorous topic to have, but it certainly is an important one to have. As we've heard today, responding to a mental health crisis, whether it's self-harm or potential harm to others, requires swift action, empathy, and the right tools. Early recognition of warning signs, having immediate access to resources, and knowing how to effectively de escalate a situation can make all the difference. But beyond that, we need to foster environments where mental health is openly discussed, where stigma is broken down, and where people feel empowered to seek help without fear of judgment. Remember, no one should face these challenges alone. Whether you're a friend, family member, or someone in crisis, there are resources and support systems available to help. Together, by staying informed and compassionate, we can build safer, more supportive communities for all. Thank you for joining us today. Stay safe, stay connected, and never hesitate to reach out if you or someone you know needs help. Good evening.
Now you see why you need to tune in every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's been an absolute joy having you with us today on Pause for the Truth. Dr. Rogers Kane and Ms. Jocelyn Turner are so grateful for your time and support. We know you have a lot of choices, and we're thrilled you chose to spend your time with us. It means the world to us. A shout out to Tyrone Jackson of Call Tyrone IT Services for making everything run smoothly behind the scenes. Tyrone, you're truly a whiz. Remember, folks, we're here every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with more insights, stories, and truths. So mark your calendars, set those reminders, and join us for another exciting episode. Thank you once again. And we can't wait to connect with you next week. Stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay tuned. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, link with us on LinkedIn, and most of all, subscribe to us on YouTube. Never forget to pause for the truth.